Good afternoon. This is Harish Pachori, and this time I have brought for you all another poem from your collection of ISC poetry, that is Reverie, and the poem which I am going to explain today is The Gift of India. It is a poem by Sarojini Naidu. But before going with the poem, line by line, I would like to tell you people something about the poem. It is a poignant and patriotic poem by Sarojini Naidu which praises the sacrifices made by the Indian soldiers in World War I. Right, dealing with the theme of courage and selfless sacrifice, The Gift of India is also an ode to the unsung heroes, the children of Mother India, who laid their lives for others. Right, India, being a colony of the Britishers then, had to help them in the First World War. Hence, we sent our soldiers to fight in the World War on Britain's behalf. This poem is a plea from Mother India to the Britishers on particular and to the world entirely as a whole, since the Indian soldiers fought with an enemy with whom they have no immediate conflict. Right? The poem consists of 24 lines and follows the rhyming scheme of AABBCC. Right, class? One more thing, since this poem has no stanzas or you say paragraphs, but actually, class, paragraphs are when you are dealing with the prose and stanzas are when you are dealing with the poetry. So I was saying that this poem has no stanzas. Still, I have divided this poem into 4 stanzas. Kindly mark, first stanza will be of 6 lines, that is the sabres of doom. That up to this mark is first stanza. Then from gathered like pearls to Flanders and France, this is second stanza. Then red banners of victory, up to this extent it is third stanza, and the rest all comes under fourth stanza. So without wasting much of your time, let me start the poem The Gift of India by Sarojini Naidu. Right, kindly concentrate. In this poem, one more thing I would like to tell you people, that the poem is divided in 2 halves. First half is giving you a pathetic picture of the war, and second half is a direct plea, a direct request from Mother India to the Britishers. Right? So, Mother India starts the poem by her request. She says, "Is there aught you need that my hands withhold? Do you need any more things which I am holding in my hands? Rich gifts of raiment or grain or gold." Raiment is for clothing, right? Or grain or gold. She is saying that since India is a colony of the Britishers, so India is already giving valuable gifts to the Britishers, whether they are clothing, cotton, or the things the things used in preparation of clothes, whether they are different kinds of grains, whether that is gold, silver, and other things. If you want any other thing, do let me know. Lo, I have flung to the east and west priceless treasures torn from my breast. And then Mother India says, if you still demand anything of precious nature, lo, I am already giving you my sons. Priceless treasures are sons. I am giving you my sons, which are hanging from my breast. I am removing them from there and giving them to you, and yielded the sons of my stricken womb to the drum beats of duty, the sabers of doom. Please mark class, stricken womb. Why womb has been termed as stricken? Stricken is incapacitated. And why the womb? Why the womb has been termed as stricken or incapacitated? Because after delivering many of her sons in the service of this World War I, she is so much sad, so much grieved, so much lamenting that there are no measures to measure. Right? Then she says to the drum beats of duty, that is, she is saying that I have already delivered my sons for the call of duty. That is the war. The sabers of doom. Mark class, sabers. Sabers are small curved swords, and doom is destruction. And the sabers of doom are the weapons of destruction. Right? Now please mark, a literary technique is used here to emphasize the extent of help provided to the Britishers. In this first stanza, the author, the poet, is using a literary technique to emphasize up to what extent India was helping the British. And kindly mark this technique of repeating successive conjunctions in a line is known as polysyndeton, and the example is from the text. The example is rich gifts of raiment or grain or gold. Right? Now coming to the second stanza, it will become a little more pathetic. She says, gathered like pearls in their alien graves, when I agreed to send my sons to the call of duty, that is to attend the war, my sons attended the war, and they were used up in the war. Here, I would like to put stress upon one more thing, class. Soldiers are never called as killed or died. They are always called as they were used up in the war, right? Or they sacrificed their lives, since if the words like killed or died are being used, it is insult to the soldiers. So he is saying, gathered like pearls in their alien graves. Alien are foreign graves, that is, in the foreign countries where the soldiers were fighting, they have been used up in the war and have been buried in their graves. Silent they sleep by the Persian waves. Alien is foreign, any of the places in foreign countries. She gives example like they were sleeping by the Persian waves. In Persia, they were sleeping by the seashore, then scattered like shells on Egyptian sands. It was Persia in the last line, it is Egypt in this line. Scattered means spreaded here and there like shells. Shells are covers. And why the dead bodies have been termed as shells? Because they don't have a soul in them, and they are bodies of the dead soldiers. Scattered like shells on Egyptian sands. They lie with pale brow and brave and broken hands. The soldiers are lying down for their last sleep. That is, the soldiers are dead. The pale brows are showing that they are dead. Then other adjectives are brave, broken hands. Brave and broken hands are signifying, class, that the soldiers have fought very bravely until they were alive, and then when they died, they were left alone. They were left alone like scattered shells, right? They are strewn like blossoms, mown down by chance. Strewn. Strewn is distributed randomly, right? Strewn is distributed randomly means one is lying here, other is lying there, other is lying somewhere else. Like blossoms, blossoms are flowers mown down by chance. Mown is the second form and the first form is M-O-W, mow. That is cut down or knocked down. So the soldiers are cut down here and there and they are spreaded entirely on the earth, right? And where else are they scattered, class? Kindly mark the words. On the blood-brown meadows of Flanders and France. Meadows are the grazing lands, right? Blood-brown meadows. The meadows are actually green, but they have become red first and then brown due to the excess of blood being mixed with on them. So she says, on the blood-brown meadows of Flanders and France. France is a country, you know, and for Flanders, class, Flanders is a sub-national state in the north of federal Belgium, the institutional merger of a territorial region and the Dutch community, which also was sharing some authority in the capital region of Brussels, right? This was the second stanza, class. Now mark for the second stanza. There were similes for the soldiers in this second stanza, like likened to pearls, to shells and blossoms. Pearls, shells and blossoms are similes used for soldiers to highlight the quality of sons of India, right? Now we'll be going with the third stanza. Then she is a little bit of repenting, or rather I should say she is weeping or crying. She says, can you measure the grief of the tears I weep? She is asking the British authorities directly. She asks, can you measure the grief of the tears I weep? She is asking the Britishers directly. Mother India is asking the Britishers directly, oh sirs, can you imagine how deeply I am grieved, or how long I have wept for my sons, or compass the woe of the watch I keep? Or do you have any idea of the woe? Woe is grief. Of the watch I keep, since I am waiting and watching and longing for my son's return, how much I am depressed, distressed or troubled by the waiting which I am keeping. Do you have any idea? Or the pride that thrills through my heart's despair? Or can you imagine how much I am despaired or I am proud? Now here is a contradiction, class. Why contradiction? Because she is saying about pride and despair at the same time. She is proud of the doings of her sons in the warfield, and she is despaired for they have not yet returned. And the hope that comforts the anguish of prayer. And the far said glorious vision I see of the torn red banners of victory. Then she says, sir, in my visions, in my dreams, I see that the torn red banners of victory are being carried home by my sons. Mark, class, red banners of victory is okay, but the banners are torn and red. This torn is implying that many of the soldiers have been used up in the war, and red banner is denoting the blood being shed by the Indian soldiers. Now in this stanza, it is replete with pathos and the intensity of the emotions experienced by Mother India, and it is conveyed by an effective literary technique, and also the technique of repeating the words of the beginning of consecutive lines is known as anaphora, and very often used in speeches and expressions of emotions, which this poem effectively is. Now class, the last stanza. When the terror and tumult of hate shall cease. She is now talking about the life after this war is over. She says, when the terror and tumult, terror is clear, then tumult is agitated noise or pandemonium. She says, when the terror and tumult of hate shall cease and life be refashioned on anvils of peace. Anvils are heavy iron blocks, and life be refashioned on anvils of peace here signifies the idea of refashioning life on the anvils of peace. It is hinting at an old military idea of converting swords to plowshares, of converting weapons to tools of utility for peaceful civilian purposes. Right? So she says, life be refashioned on anvils of peace, and your love shall offer memorial thanks to the comrades who fought in your dauntless ranks. She says, after the war is over, you will be in a habit to offer memorial thanks to your soldiers who have used up in the war. Dauntless ranks, dauntless are invulnerable to fear or intimidation, right? And you honor the deeds of deathless ones. She says that when once this war is over, what you people, what the British people will do, they will praise the doings of the British soldiers but not the Indian soldiers. Hence, she is complaining that when you will be offering memorial thanks and when you will be honoring the deeds of deathless ones, remember the blood of my martyred sons. At that time, sir, please remember that in winning of this war, I too have sacrificed thousands of my sons. Please make up for them as well, and let me feel proud again as I have sent many of my children to be used up in that war. Right? Now go through the poem once by yourself. Thank you. Have a nice day.